I had honestly never given curriculum much thought in the last 3 years I've been at the university. When we were asked about it on the first day of class, I was a little bit confused because I had always seen it as a checklist, I guess, that teachers had to do. It was a government mandated checklist, but teachers had to do it in order to get the students from their grade onto the next grade. And if the teacher did that and all the kids went to the next grade, you'd have succeeded in being a teacher. Um, sure, I had heard it was outdated, and one example I had heard was like one going back to the 60s, but I was like, okay, well, obviously it worked, so why did they have to change it? I honestly think it was the discussions we had as a class and in our smaller seminars about curriculum was what really changed the whole idea around it for me, as well as the schedule of my classes this year. I don't know anyone else's schedules in ECS 210 or anything, but I felt like through all my 300 level classes, it was consistently talking about curriculum every single time. What it meant to us as future teachers, what it meant to us as prior students in high school, if we ever noticed it, what it was missing, and what it was really saying without actually saying it. So it was a bunch of different things. What stuck with me and will probably stick with me every time I look at a curriculum document is on the first day when Mike had asked us about what we thought curriculum was. After we had given him some answers because we didn't really know what to say, he just went right out and said the curriculum was made from the white male point of view, their perspectives of the world, their lenses, and not taking into consideration anyone else's. So that had stuck with me. I feel like I had known that before walking into that classroom, but I had never discussed it with anyone or been in the right situation to discuss it with anyone because, let's be honest, that makes people feel uncomfortable. But why does it make us uncomfortable? Because we know something is wrong or something needs to be changed. So after Mike had said that, and as we began to look at documents for our curriculum deconstruction, I wanted to look through the documents through that sort of lens or that perspective. So I read through it once the first time, and then I read through it a second time like that. And I started to notice things like, oh, you know what, that's really not supposed to be in there. Or how do they keep that in a document that we look at every single day, more so as a teacher, and not change it to reflect the more modern outlook that we have? Like, it's such an easy thing that could easily be switched around. And I was actually in another 300 class for my minor, and we were doing the same thing, a deconstruction of curriculum assignment. So I feel like I was lucky on that part that I got to look at two different documents, and I kind of compared and contrasted them to see what they were missing, if anything was similar. And they were missing lack of diversity within their resources. Again, white, straight, male perspectives, not really a lot of females, definitely not a different cultures other than, predominantly white cultures. Lack of adaptions for students, and then most importantly, the treaty ed. And treaty ed, I thought, was what stood out to me the most because in university, every single class, we're told you must teach treaty education. It's major. We're trying to make a change, which I totally get and I'm on board with. But I can only think of one specific time in elementary or high school that I ever uh, learned something even remotely close to treaty education, and that wasn't even in Saskatchewan. So, what does that come across as? I consider myself an educated person, and I've learned to check my privilege years ago. My privilege of being white, my privilege of being born into a middle class family. Um, but I'm not perfect, and I do think bad things sometimes. And when I hear certain subjects, I do get uncomfortable. Like when anyone talks about oppression, I realize that settlers caused most, if not all, of oppression around the world, and it makes me feel bad. It's more of a secondhand embarrassment, but I realize things need to be done in order to remedy those feelings. As I personally reflect upon myself and I look at what makes me uncomfortable, I realize that it's the experiences I've had in this city um, that have made me feel this way, and I'm at a crossroads with myself. Um, from these experiences, and I won't use names or places or anything like that, but from my experiences in this city, I've dealt with the lowest of the low every day on repeat. And then when I take the time to think of myself, like, oh, Emily, you can't think that way, or insert culture, race, they're not all like that, I'm shown a different picture daily. And it's hard going from these classes that we're talking about inclusiveness and appreciating each other, and then going and seeing this. It's just really hard for me. That being said, a trick I use to force myself into stopping that line of thinking is realizing the hand that my people, white people, had in making these stereotypes a reality, whether that be forming residential schools or systematically, maybe even unconsciously, oppressing people. We had a hand in it. We need to realize that. And it's almost like a form of guilt tripping, but I find it works for me to catch myself. It has become so hard the more you're made aware of the issues, the more you want to do something about it. But you don't want to come across as, like we talked about in class, the white lady coming in and saving all the people of color or the oppressed people, because I can do that because I'm white and I know everything because I'm perfect. Um, but I want to do something about it without coming across that way. And I see educating people as a way to do that. Even if it makes them uncomfortable, I still want to do it. Curriculum is so much more than just a checklist that teachers need to do in order to be good at teaching or have to have been able to do their job. In fact, if I've learned anything from this class, it's that you shouldn't teach straight from the curriculum, because if you do, you cut out so many different perspectives. And to do that would just be using a position of power in a non productive way. Um, it's there as a guideline to follow, but until a suitable update is done, I think it should be looked at with a vision of change in mind, and that as future teachers, we must be willing to take risks with it in order to give future generations a better education, especially when it comes to outdated curriculum.